All right, so let's continue our discussion. All right, so in the first half, so I just trying to explain to you, so there are different type of unemployment, right? And so far, I have just explained to you some unemployment is caused by scarcity of information or caused by friction in the labor market, and then we label it as frictional unemployment. That's here. And this background picture summarizes the frictional unemployment very well. Essentially, it just takes us time to find out the right job, or it takes time for the employer to find out the right candidate, right? So that's just going to cause some unemployment. And this unemployment is called frictional. Now, secondly, we have some employments called structural. Okay? And then why there is structural unemployment? Okay? So essentially, it's because there's some particular labor market structures that's going to cause someone who lose their job. Okay? So it's called structural. To understand what is considered as structural unemployment, now let's look at examples. So first example, so in the labor market, so we have labor union, right? And then what is labor union? Essentially is the organization. So they just collectively represent the workers. Okay, so they negotiate for better terms in terms of benefit, in terms of working condition, right? But this labor union, so they are going to create some unintended consequences, which is unemployment. Why is that? Just think about the simple supply and demand, right? So this is supply and this is demand. But now we are in a labor market. As I just mentioned, labor unit, what they do, so they negotiate on behalf of their members, like workers. They negotiate for better wage, better compensation, right? So what that means in this diagram, it just means they are going to impose a wage, or they're going to negotiate a bargaining for wage. This wage is probably going to above the equilibrium wage. Okay? And then with a higher wage, you're going to see supply exceed demand. If supply exceed demand, and then so we are going to have unemployment. But keep in mind, so this unemployment is caused by what? Caused by labor union. It's part of the structure of the labor market. Right? So they need labor union to protect workers. But unfortunately, so this protection to the worker, they have some side effect in the sense they're going to hurt the workers. This is the first time. Now we go to efficiency wage. Okay, so this other possibility or other structure in the labor market, so that is going to lead to unemployment, right? So what is efficient wage? Again, so just think about supply and demand. For now, let's just ignore or forget the frictional unemployment we just talked about. Okay, if the market is perfect, and then the supply and demand must equal to each other, or think about in the micro world, right? And there are going to be no unemployment or zero unemployment. If there's zero unemployment, now think about what that means to a worker. Just put yourself in the shoes of a typical worker. So if I know there's zero unemployment, because the market is perfect, no information, no labor union as we just talked about. Okay, and then ask yourself, do you have incentive to work hard? The answer is no. Why is that? Because I don't care. So if I don't work hard, yes, so my employer may fire me, right? But why would I care? Because immediately I can find another job because there's zero unemployment. Okay? So it won't take me any effort to find a new job. So I would just be lazy. Right? But then that's a very bad news to the business. Because the business, they want to improve their productivity, they want to increase their revenue or make more profit. And they must need anyone work hard. Now, because there's no unemployment in the market, so nobody wants to work hard. So what the business can do? So interestingly, they invent this efficiency wage. What is this efficiency wage? So essentially, it works as a stick and a carrot. It works as a carrot is because the efficiency wage is above the equilibrium wage, or there's a bonus. Okay? So that's a carrot to the worker to work hard. At the same time, this efficiency wage work as a stick. Why is that? It's because with this efficiency wage, so that's essentially a equilibrium wage plus some bonus. So that just essentially artificially creates some unemployment, right? Because now the wage is above here, above this level. Now with this higher wage, because everyone's paying higher wage and the supply is going to exceed demand. Now this efficiency wage artificially create unemployment. And this unemployment possibility works as a stick. So that's going to give the worker incentive to work hard, right? So this is the second type of unemployment. But again, so this unemployment is caused by some structure embedded in the market. All right. Okay, so now we go to the third possibility, and it's also called structural unemployment. It's a side effect of government policy. The good example is called minimum wage. Right? So minimum wage essentially is artificially increase the wage above the equilibrium wage. That's going to create higher supply compared with demand. And that's naturally, so that's going to lead to unemployment. But certainly, some minimum wage has its merits. Right? Or there's a reason why we need minimum wage, even though this minimum wage can have this unintended negative consequence in the labor market. Okay, so let's just postpone the discussion of minimum wage in the future slides. All right, so those are the things that can cause unemployment, but you can clearly see those are some structural problems, right? So inside the economy, so that leads to unemployment. And we label this type of unemployment as structural unemployment, right? And here just explain to you what I just explained, like a union. Okay? So the why union is going to cause unemployment, right? Okay. And this structure unemployment, right? So this just show you, this just here, this just repeat what I just explained, right? So we start with supply and demand, and then with equilibrium wage, right? And then so you have market clearing in labor market, so you have zero unemployment. Now, so the structural unemployment caused by some equilibrium wage, caused by wage that's different from the equilibrium wage in the absence of those structural problems, like a minimum wage, like the wage negotiated by worker union, right? So now here is they just show you the minimum wage, as I just mentioned earlier. Right? So the minimum wage has its positive side and its negative side. What's the negative side? We already saw that. So that's going to create unemployment. What is the positive side? So the minimum wage is going to improve the well-being of those low-skilled workers, right? Whoever have a job, whoever has been paid at a very low rate. So this minimum wage is going to help them. But certainly this comes at a cost that's going to reduce the chance for those low-skilled workers who has been unemployed, right? So this is like double-sided sword, double-edged sword, right? So it's going to fix some problem, but at the same time introduce some other problem. And then in terms of policy making, in terms of economic analysis, so when we make our decision to support or disapprove this minimum wage, we need to factor in both aspects. Right. So, but in this class, I only tell you so you have a critical thinking to understand the minimum wage may have both positive and negative impact. Right. Right. So we have talked about two types of unemployment. One is called frictional. The other is structural. Okay. So we add them together. So these two, add them together. We label them as natural unemployment. Okay. So one of the main reasons we call them natural unemployment is because this type of unemployment coming from some particular things embedded in our economy. Frictional is because of information scarcity. Structural is because the particular structure inside our economy. But certainly the reason why we need those structural is because it's due to some reasons beyond simple economic analysis. Right? So for example, the efficiency wage, right? It's just people, human nature is people tend to be lazy, right? Or unions. It's just because the business, they want to extract the most out of their business. So they want to have lower wage, right? So the unions, in some sense, is going to protect workers. But overall, those are the things embedded in the economy. It's a natural of the market economy, right? So natural of the natural of the market economy is going to generate some level of unemployment, and we call them natural unemployment. Now we can look at cross-country difference in terms of natural unemployment rate. There is a wide range of difference, but certainly this difference will be explained by the fundamental difference in terms of their economy, in terms of their institution. Okay, let's look at some examples. Just on the far left, you have Norway. On the far right, you have Spain. And OECD average, OECD stands for Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development. So essentially, it's a group of rich countries. Okay? So average OECD country observe a 7.7% of natural unemployment rate. So where's the United States? United States here. Okay? United States is slightly below the average. So if we go to the right-hand side, you're going to see high unemployment rate. And what causes those countries has high unemployment rate? And then we need to understand what caused the natural unemployment rate, either because of friction or because of structure, right? It must be the case. So in those countries, they have more friction in terms of searching for a job, or because those countries they have stronger unions, or tighter regulation that cause higher natural rate of unemployment. Okay. Now let's look at a practice question to understand the concept we just talked about. Okay. Read this question, and then so we characterize what type of unemployment this is. Okay. So Jasmine has recently moved to Florida because she loved the warm climate there. Being new to the area, she will need to spend a few weeks looking for a new job. This is an example of, actually this is called frictional, right? Because it's a new place and she need to gather those information. So that help her to decide which sector I'm going to work, where I'm going to live, and then so where's the location of the job, right? So this frictional. Okay, so we have watched this video lots of class. Just remind yourself what this video about, right? So essentially this video just tells us, so in reality, unemployment rate is a good indicator, but not a perfect, right? So there are other type of unemployment, or so there are other type of problem the unemployment rate did not fully capture. Right? But certainly, so these clips also mention different type of unemployment. Okay. All right, to summarize, friction and structural unemployment, they always present due to the fundamental, I wouldn't call it problem, just fundamental property of market economy, right? And then, so we call that natural. Okay. All right, so this is the frictional and structural unemployment, and we label them as natural unemployment. Okay? And then most of the time, so this natural unemployment may differ from the actual unemployment. So the difference we called cyclical unemployment. Right? So just for example, the actual unemployment is 8%. The natural unemployment is 6.6%. So that means there are 1.4% is caused by something else, and we call this cyclical unemployment. But what is exactly cyclical unemployment? So remember earlier, I showed you two graphs. Those graphs just tell us the correlation between unemployment rate and the economic growth rate. And we saw that typically when the real GDP growth rate is negative, the unemployment rate is high. On the other hand, when real GDP growth rate is low, the unemployment rate is high, right? So there is a correlation between unemployment rate and the GDP growth, or alternatively, so the correlation with business cycle. Okay? And so we call those unemployment cyclical. It's going to move in around with the health of the economy or with the business cycle. Okay, now, so here I also want to explain to you why low growth is correlated with higher unemployment rate. So there are two reasons why lower growth will lead to higher unemployment rate. Number one, no growth means GDP falls, right? Because we produce less. Okay, so if GDP falls or the production falls, and then firms must lay off workers, right? Because they're not functioning in full capacity. They don't need that many workers. Okay, so this is the first reason. But the firm lay off workers, then naturally leads to unemployment. Okay. On the other hand, when real GDP growth is low, when business is in low capacity, that means there are many idle capital and labors. Okay, or equivalently, we still can think about economic growth has not been maximized. And then the ability for business to generate new jobs will handicapped, right? Just think about if we have a coffee shop, okay? So if the coffee shop is only allowed half open, think about the pandemic, right? And then so the coffee shop's ability to generate new jobs will be handicapped, will be cut by half, right? Because in regular time, so you hire worker, but at the regular time, so you may need additional workers. This is what we call expansion. Now if you only allow to operate in 50% of the capacity, and then your ability to hire a new worker is going to be half. Right? So there are two reasons explain why lower growth correlated with higher unemployment. Right. All right. So lastly, so we need to understand what we can do to affect the natural unemployment rate. Right? So in order to understand what kind of policy can help change the natural rate of unemployment, we need to understand what caused the natural rate of unemployment to change. Okay? And there are three possible reasons. One, maybe there's changes in characteristics of labor force. Example, change in demographics. Okay? So what is the change in demographics? Think about in the United States, so we have a baby boomer generation, they retire, right? And then, so that's going to cause a change in natural rate of unemployment, both in frictional and in structural, right? So how would that cause change in frictional? Because baby boomer generation retire, they may relocate, right? And they may even create new industry, right? And then so they change the taste of the population in terms of the demand. So this change is going to have impact on the labor market. So this new workers, they may need to find time, they may take time to sort out what industry needs workers or what type of worker they need, right? Okay, and so this is also going to have impact on the structural unemployment. Why is that? So this baby boomer generation retired. Now we have more vacancies, and eventually, so you're going to have different labor force distribution. Now, younger worker, they may have different attitude or different preference over union, and then so eventually they're going to have different impact on structural unemployment. So this is the first. Now, change in labor market institutions can can certainly have impact on natural rate unemployment, including changing in union. Right, but the changing union could caused by changing demographics, as I just explained to you. Or maybe there's changes in agency. So it's here, so essentially agency is a government agency help you to find a job, right? Particularly during the crisis. So that's going to speed up the process of finding jobs, right? So that's going to reduce the friction on employment. And then so you may have new technology. Okay? Think about internet. Think about Zoom. So the internet means the website. Think about monster.com or indeed.com or LinkedIn. So that's going to help you to gather information quickly compared to the conventional job search, right? And Zoom actually can speed up the interview process instead of seeing your potential employer at their physical location. So you may interview a job like 1,000 miles away, right? So that's going to speed up the job search. So that's going to potentially reduce friction on employment. And lastly, so changes in government policy can have significant impact on natural rate of unemployment. Here's one example, job training program. So this is particularly designed for unemployed. For the unemployed, so the government offers job training programs to help those who lost a job, they gain some new skills so that they can find a job, right? So that's going to reduce the structure and friction on unemployment, right? So those regarding to natural rate of unemployment. Now here I also want to show you an interesting fact regarding to US labor market. So this is after 1948, after World War II. And in this graph, I show you the women's labor force participation rate. Okay, so this is percentage of labor force. So essentially it's a labor force participation rate. This is for women, right? And here, so this is the labor force participation rate for individual under age 25, right? And so interestingly, so if we look at men's labor force participation rate, but unfortunately I did not put that. So if we look at that, you're going to see a decline in, so actually it's probably somewhere like this. Okay. Actually, there was a decline in males' labor force participation. Okay. This is a long-term trend. And you may want to think about what caused this trend. And then particularly, so you may think about what explained a rise in females' labor force participation rate, and then at the same time, there's a decline in males' labor force participation. There are many different explanations. One explanation I find out quite interesting and quite convincing. They say after World War II, so the US economy experiencing high growth. And so we have seen many new technology, and then particularly the home production technology or housekeeping technology. Think about dishwasher, think about washing machine or vacuum. Okay, so those new appliance or new home technology increase the opportunity cost for women to stay at home. So these increasing opportunity costs give them incentive to go out and looking for a job. But of course, there are other social attitude change, explain higher or rising females' labor force participation rate. But here I just mentioned one of particular aspect economists has been studied, right? Okay, so let's look at these practice questions. Which of the following statements is true? A, the natural rate of unemployment is country's unemployment rate during recession. That's not true. Actually, this is related to cyclical, but not cyclical. B, the natural rate of unemployment equal to country's unemployment rate during expansion. This is same as A, it's not correct. C, the natural rate of unemployment is the sum of frictional and structural. This is correct. Now, last one, the natural rate of unemployment is the sum of frictional and cyclical. That's not correct. Right. Right. Okay, so to finish today's discussion, so I'm show you this slide. Right. So Germany, they reunited in 1989. Right. And so in east part of Germany and the western part of Germany, they have very different structure, different institution, different technology. That naturally leads to lots of unemployment, and many of the unemployment this is linked to our structural unemployment, right? And just think about the young persons from East Germany, right? So they may want to looking for jobs in West Germany, right? And then they may find out their skill may not fit with West Germany's economy. At the same time, East Germany, so they have lots of regulation like previously, right? And those regulation or those institutions is going to impose some frictions on this reunited economy that naturally creates unemployment. All right, so I'm going to stop here for today. And so Wednesday, so we will finish this slide, and then so we are going to do a review as we did for the midterm one. Just keep in mind, so we are going to have our second midterm next Wednesday. All right, thank you so much for your time and for your patience, and see you on Wednesday.